This is absolutely Essendon, the Bombers fan channel that, like our team, takes a while to get things going. But when we do, we almost make things interesting. If slow starts were an Olympic sport, we'd be bringing home gold, silver and a few soft tissue injuries. We got jumped so hard in that first quarter that Carlton had time to kick 6 goals, order drinks and update their LinkedIn profile. Call the Jets. Therapy is in session. That's right, the Bombers went down by 8 points in the end. It was 11-12 to 11-4 after being down by 38 points at quarter time. Now, the rain stayed away, but the rostered quarter off didn't.
Yeah. Do
you remember the rostered quarter off? We were running with that a couple of years ago. It seems to be the first quarter now.
Yeah.
Which it begs the question, what's going on in that dressing room?
Well, I'm going to say not a lot of motivational speeches before the game. I don't know what Brad Scott's doing in there to wind the boys up before they head out onto the ground. I mean, they're coming out like in a daze, like they're snoozing or something. I mean, what's happening in there?
I don't know. Is he showing a French art house movie? Is he?
Oh God! Thank God you said art house.
What do you think?
Well, maybe you should show the other sort.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, but
get the boys a little excited.
Will they study that? Will they sort of question themselves and go, well, look, have a look. I mean, the last 2 games, I think Essendon has managed to kick. What was it? 14 points in the first quarter, and the opposition's kicked 79.
Yeah, I think in the last 3 games, the last 3 losses, it's been 19 goals kicked against us in the first quarter. And so I'm talking about the Western Bulldogs game, of course Brisbane and Carlton. 19 goals to 2. In those first quarters.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, Brad is not the most sort of inspiring individual. He's very articulate, but he's damn boring. So, maybe they need to get something happening in the rooms beforehand just to pump the boys up a bit.
I think you could be onto something Tony Robbins-esque.
Yeah.
Something,
Get a little humour going, or maybe a motivational speaker.
Yeah.
The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Footballers. Who wrote that?
Yes, Stephen Covey.
Get Coves in.
Coves, yes.
Get Coves in.
Maybe they need that. Who was that Hawks coach that said, "Don't think, do"?
Or can we do first player to get a touch gets a special sort of lucky dip, or takes home the chook? I don't know.
The free meat tray.
Anything. But for God's sake, Essendon, please.
Yes.
We could have won the last 2 games if you boys had woken up when you'd come out onto the ground. But except it's like, after you, please. I mean, it's all very polite, and Carlton bloody banged on 6 goals.
Yeah.
And looked like a premiership team,
mate,
we know they are not.
We made them look amazing. And of course, the poetry of life has it that who kicks the first goal for them?
Don't say it. Don't say that name.
Slammed one home. I don't think he kicked one for 4 years.
He's dead to me. The woof when he kicks the ball is the most. In fact, they were a little bit sort of down on the woofs last night because most of them were hack kicks, so it's hardly worthy of a woof. But Sardi, good on you, kicks his first goal for however many years, and got them going very early in the game, mind you, and it didn't look good. And again, very much, this was Brisbane game Mark II, wasn't it?
It was.
We looked like witches' hats. There was nothing to get excited about for the Bombers in that first quarter.
Couldn't stick a tackle. Just couldn't get anything happening.
Other than one player, I should add, that did stick the tackles, and that was the new boy, Luamon Lual. I thought was pretty impressive, and of course kicked the only goal for us in the first quarter. But putting that to one side, I thought his tackling was actually really, really good. And, a lot of his more sort of experienced and senior teammates, were too scared to break a fingernail, I think. And I'm going to come to a couple of those players because I've been very strong in supporting 2 players in particular in this team. And, players that have been around for 2 or 3 or 4 years now, who I'm going to say right now probably shouldn't be in this team going forward after their performance last night.
Jeez. Okay, well, stay tuned for that. But I was perplexed by the inclusion of Lual, and I know it's all about playing the kids, and definitely our coaches seem to embrace that, but almost over-embraced it, because I hadn't heard. I don't watch the VFL super closely, but I watch people that do watch the VFL play, and it didn't seem like he was shooting the lights out in the VFL, but maybe he was brought in for the reason that you've just explained, that he could lay a tackle, apply some pressure, and has a bit of speed, it would seem.
Yeah, look, I mean, you're right. Let's just quickly talk about Luamon. Firstly, what a fantastic scene before the game in the dressing rooms when his dad presented him his jumper.
Yeah, very nice.
What a beautiful story. And again, I love these stories of people who come to this country from, much more difficult lives, and you see the sheer delight on their faces when one of their sons and daughters, occasionally daughters, not in the men's team, of course, but pull off an achievement like that most of us could only ever dream of. So congratulations. Yeah. But yes, his form in the VFL was hardly the stuff of, he must be promoted to the AFL side. So it was a surprising selection. But, obviously the coaches are seeing something that maybe we don't.
Yeah.
But he was pretty good in the game. In general, I thought he did all right.
Yes, and in the end, a valuable first goal
that
he got, and it was nice. Very, as you said, very nice to see the family there. We talked about what they're doing going in, but the second quarter, there was a response.
Well, I couldn't see it coming. I don't know about you, but I sort of felt against Brisbane that we would respond. And the Brisbane game was much wetter. So you always felt that brought those two teams closer together for that game. The wet conditions gave us a chance. Against Carlton, I just couldn't see us getting back into the game. I thought they were going to toast us.
Yeah.
And, based on that first quarter. But we did somehow. And it's interesting. I don't know whether it was so much Essendon turning up the pressure, which they certainly did, and our pressure was very good in the second quarter, but it was just interesting to watch Carlton go from playing that fluid, direct, really dynamic game style to becoming like nervous Nellies, chipping the ball around, making poor decisions, going very indirect, and it all came crumbling down. And as soon as we started to see that, I think our boys really stepped up, and we started to turn it on. So whereas Carlton were dominating with marking, chip passing, marking, possession game, they looked all at sea when the heat came, and I thought we did really well. And then all of a sudden you were thinking, okay, maybe we are a chance. And they got out to, 38, 39 point lead, I think, after Fantasia kicked that goal in the second quarter. So, to get back to where we did in the end was a fantastic effort by the boys.
Yes, because it wasn't for the second week, I just thought second week in a row, how are they going to come back again after what they did with Brisbane? Psychologically, how often can you do that? It's no way to live, right? But they found a way to get back into the game. But you're right. But when Orazio kicked that goal, I thought, okay, well, probably not our night. And just the frustrating thing about the whole night is every goal that we kicked it was so much hard work. We had to scramble, whereas Carlton just seemed to get so many easy goals, let's say.
They certainly got one very easy goal, if I could just interject on that. And I'm going to make a comment on the umpiring in that first quarter. I know we've passed the first quarter in our review, but just whilst on that subject, that free kick that was given against Nick Martin taking the ball over the goal line was criminal.
Yeah.
And, these bloody umpires, they're out there threatening to sue anyone who criticises them now. You can come at me, guys, because that was an absolute disgraceful decision. I mean, the ball would have rolled over. There was no Carlton player within 30 metres of it.
Yeah.
The ball would have rolled over the goal line anyway.
Most players do a pretend fumble.
Yeah.
They do a professional fumble, and it just happens. And, surely they can see that.
And Martin took the ball with one step.
Yeah.
before he crossed that line.
Yeah.
And you know, look, in the end, that goal, I mean, they won by 8 points, but it could have been 2. So that, and then some of these sort of insufficient intent decisions in that first quarter where Essendon players were being tackled while kicking the ball. And, of course, the ball's going to go out of bounds in those cases, not at the fault of the kicker, but because of the tackle, you muppets. I mean, this was disgraceful umpiring. In the end, the free kicks were 25-25. But you know what? That doesn't tell the story about just the sheer ineptness of the umpiring that we're seeing in a professional sport. And the AFL's really got to step up and do something. I have a theory, by the way. I have a theory that they're actually going to introduce last touch for the ball going out of bounds next year. I reckon it'll come next year. That the team that touches the ball last will give away the free kick if it goes over the boundary line. Why do I think that? Because they're playing it every single time now, and it's kind of like just creeping up on us, so that when the final decision comes to make that the rule, and I'm okay with that, by the way, then no one's going to complain about it because it's pretty much happening now.
You might be onto something.
So anyway, that's my little rant for the day.
No, but it's just another classic case of the umpires being overly influenced by the crowd.
Yeah.
You can just see it. They just get swept up in it, and they love to just go, yeah, no, they're right, you did. And it just, they just don't seem to have that presence of mind. I find it so frustrating, and the insufficient intent. Like, people just now, again, the crowd just go, they're just calling for anything. And it's just some of those moments where Essendon players, they had no choice. They're under so much pressure. I don't understand how it can be insufficient intent.
Right.
The ball just happened to go down the boundary line to nobody because they're under that much pressure. How is that not clearly visible? What game are they watching? Don't not get me started.
So change the rule, all for that. But it reminds me of the old days in the Colosseum when, you know, the gladiator would turn to the emperor and, you know, is it a thumbs up or thumb down? And the emperor would be looking to the crowd and going, what do you want me to do, good people? Yes. Shall we let him live or shall we have him killed? Yeah. And that is those umpires were gloating like, you know, like Claudius in the Colosseum last night. Look what I have done. Yes. I have given my free kick.
Yes.
You shall have a goal scored against you.
It is very much. Just technically, it used to be thumb up or thumb across. It was actually thumb down. That was in Gladiator. Ridley Scott decided to make a thumb down.
I'd be believing Ridley Scott's historical accuracy.
Exactly. Well, that's my point.
He had Napoleon leading the charge at Waterloo when Napoleon was actually about 3 kilometres away. But anyway, that's okay. That's another thing.
Anyway, I'm being a stickler only because I've done the Colosseum tour a few times.
That's your Roman blood coming out. I think.
Look, it is. It is. Anyway, so do not get me wound up. And we actually recorded on the back of the last episode. We started to because we talked about the changes at AFL House and how we were, you know, welcoming of those changes and the 9. I think we came up, was it the 9 things
There's
that
a few.
Swan should focus on? But anyway, we deleted that.
We did delete it. Well, we deleted it out of pity for our viewers, so as to not subject them to another 30 minutes of our ramblings.
Yeah.
But
so just when you think that we just upload any old crap, no, sometimes we are discerning.
There is stuff that hits the cutting floor.
It doesn't seem like it, but we are.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, but we did talk about that, and unfortunately no one saw it. But we were actually discussing some of these rule changes that we felt were necessary, and that deliberate out of bounds or whatever you call it is most definitely one. We've got to take the subjectivity out of the game and let the umpires umpire on black and white decision making.
Yes.
And that's fair for everybody. So I don't really care if there's a half a dozen, 10, 12, 30 free kicks for the ball going out of bounds in a game. As long as it's everybody and it's fair. That's it. So back to our game, Carlton Essendon.
Yes, all right. So just very quickly, while we're on that, because this is kind of a segue, because we said the MRO reviewing.
Yeah.
One thing that will most definitely come before the MRO is Sam Durham's bump. They're calling it a quotation stupid act. Everyone's sort of jumping on it. I don't know if it was that bad. Yes.
No.
Maybe a little reckless, maybe, but really, I mean, there's so much bumping and grinding in these games, you know.
Sounds like my weekend away. Sammy's going. He's going to have a holiday.
2 weeks?
I think he will get probably 2 weeks for that. I think Chera was uninjured in the end.
Yeah. Bit of a black eye? Bit of something?
Black eye's not cause for suspension, but I don't believe he was, concussed.
Took his time off,
and
getting off.
I think there was some controversy around the way Carlton managed him.
Yeah.
But Kane Cornes wet his pants over this.
Yeah.
Basically saying that, Sam Durham was sort of, to be discussed in the same frame of discussion as the Yorkshire Ripper for what he did.
Yes.
And I watched that numerous times, and you could see Durham was mindful of Chera and made sure he planted one on him, and good on you, Sammy. But you're going to spend a couple of weeks tanning up on the Gold Coast for that one, my friend. But and it was just a shame he didn't take out bloody Adam Saar doing that. But anyway, he's gone. He's a couple of weeks for Sam on that one.
But that's okay, because we're only playing Geelong next week.
Yeah,
so
well, I think we'll pretty much rest the whole team next week.
That'll be fine.
Are you allowed to default or not play? Not turn up?
We'd rather.
Yeah. You can have that one.
But why not? It'd make it way more interesting. Okay, so we were scrapping, we were scrambling, and we were entering the inside 50, but boy, those intercept marks of Carlton were just giving me elevated blood pressure.
Elevated? Well, yeah. So a couple of things. Firstly, Jack Silvani has become a very good defender. And, I think he's been a player at Carlton that's been very poorly managed through his career. His father was one of the greatest defenders of all time. And, wouldn't you be trying to mould him into a similar player? He was very good. And they've got a young kid there, O'Keefe, who played his first game, was just pulling down great marks everywhere, one grip, one hand, clear, easy, strong marks. Something we were not able to do on the other side of the coin. And I think, Nate Caddy is a player that we can be very excited about and will be a fantastic player for our football club. But he's got to work a little more on his marking. I think he still lacks a bit of strength in his arms. And, you could have probably given him a couple of free kicks for having his arms chopped and 3 or 4 Carlton defenders hanging off him. But Nate, that's going to happen. If you're the main man, you've got to learn to stand up and grab a couple of those marks, and he wasn't able to do that with any great degree.
Time. That was a lot of learnings for him, I think.
There were learnings, because he had that fantastic game against Brisbane the week before, he was a little off last night, but still works really hard, gets up and down the ground and does his best, so no criticism from me.
I think a lot of that was the way the ball was sort of being moved around by Essendon as well. We were under pressure all night. There was a lot of handballing to players in worse positions than the original player, and a lot of those chains of handballs, yes, some of them came off.
Yeah.
They were high pressure stuff. Many didn't, causing turnovers. So I felt sometimes maybe even one handball too many.
That was they were playing that handball game, getting the ball into the corridor and then getting the overlap run, which looked great when it was coming off. But as every handball happened in that chain, it was getting closer and closer and closer to it becoming unstuck.
Yeah.
A couple of times they pulled it off and were able to get the kick in at the end to a player in the forward 50. But several times it didn't come off. But I do like the adventurism of the style. They were being creative. They were taking the game on. And to be honest, had they just been kicking the ball long down the line, to your point, Carlton's intercept marking would have probably brought an end to that anyway.
Yeah.
So I think the sort of chain balling, the handballs through the middle of the ground was probably not a bad idea. And I think they looked pretty good when they pulled it off, but it was high risk football.
So in terms of the midfield, you had Parrish coming back in. I think he got 31 disposals.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
He did.
Did quite well. For his first game back, I mean, remember Caldwell took a little time to warm up, but you had Zach Merritt in defence. He had a relatively quiet night. You had Martin kind of playing forward, all over really, and classy as always.
As always, yeah.
But what did you think of that whole setup in the midfield?
I've got to say, I thought Parrish was really good coming back. He did look a bit rusty, and some of his disposal was a bit shaky. But to be fair, he's probably never been that good in the disposal efficiency area. But he had 10 clearances. I think he was by far and away our best player at clearances.
Yeah.
And, when the game kind of got away from us a little bit, and certainly in the last quarter when the game was up to be won, Carlton were dominating clearances in that last quarter. So the ability to get the ball out of those stoppages is so important in football, and having Darcy back in the team, it just shows you what he can do. He's never going to be that sort of smooth by foot player, but he can get the ball and he can get it out of the congested play. And so I think, he'll take a couple of weeks to get back to his best, but I'm happy that he's back in the team.
Yeah. Now, Setterfield had the job on Cripps.
Yeah.
Who normally has a big night on it against us, but he didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't last night. I think it was less than 15 disposals that he had for the night.
It was about 15.
I thought Setterfield was very good.
I reckon that game. I mean, look, Setterfield. We've spoken about him a few times this season. He's been one of our best players this year. He just gets the job done every week. And I would have him in the top 5 of our best and fairest at the moment, because I'm sure the coaches are going to be recognising the work that he does, because he does the job. He does it every week. He's a tackling beast. But last night, he gave Carlton a big FU. Because if you remember, of course, the reason he left Carlton was because he couldn't get a game because of Patrick Cripps primarily. Cripps was their sort of large, big-bodied midfielder that was keeping Setterfield out of that side. And when Cripps was out injured for a while and Setterfield did get to play for a period with the Blues, he was very good. So, great for him. He showed Carlton exactly what they got rid of, and he gave their great Brownlow medalists a lesson. He had Cripps in his back pocket. So well done to Setterfield. But Alan Martin, I just want to say, this guy, he is just blossoming in front of our very eyes. He's been a very good player since he joined Essendon a few years ago as a supplementary selection player. God, how we managed to get him through that, I'll never quite understand.
Yeah.
But we're blessed that we did. But that goal he got in the last quarter, if you remember, he took the ball sort of 45 metres out, played on, and just the sidestep to get around the Carlton player and then drill the ball from about 35 out. Just pure class. And, I think he's rapidly emerging as our best player. And as Zach goes into the twilight years of his career and is now playing a different role, as you mentioned, down back, I think the onus is now really on Nick Martin to be the creative force in the midfield. And the fact that he can score goals so readily makes him an absolute weapon. He'll never get the recognition of a lot of players of similar ilk from other clubs, but he is absolutely in the top 50 players in the AFL right now. Yeah,
he's doing very well.
Yeah.
I remember we're trying to come up with a cartoon character for him, and I think one of the viewers suggested Alfredo Linguini, I think, from Ratatouille.
Yeah, it's absolutely him.
That was a very good suggestion. He's got that look. I think that was suggested by Luke, who ran into us outside the office works.
Right.
That was his suggestion.
Right. Very good. Well done, Luke. Yeah. Well, it's spot on too. So Luke, clearly a big fan of Disney animated films.
Yes.
Good for you, Luke.
He is. Okay.
But one more player I just wanted to talk about before we sort of move on.
Yes.
Well, actually, a couple, because I want to get to my rant on the two that I'm a bit disappointed with. But I just want to take my hat off to Jai Caldwell, who in the first half, he was the guy that kept us in the game. And, I think he had 540 metres.
Yeah.
540 odd metres gain, but as a kind of inside hard nut mid. He's not the outside type player who's running past the pack who can get that kind of distance.
Yeah.
That was an incredible effort from him. And his tackling, I think he had 8 tackles. He was fantastic. Jai Caldwell is rapidly becoming one of the very, very best midfielders in the competition. We've got a lot to look forward to with the likes of Durham, Caldwell, Merritt, Harley Reid, of course. Fingers crossed.
Yes, well, indeed, as long as they stay healthy, touch wood. And don't forget, Caldwell kicked a goal, a very valuable goal on a night when, again, it was hard to cobble together a score. We got to 70 points. 80 would have been great. That's where he's valuable as well.
But our pressure in the last 2 or 3 quarters was just fantastic. I mean, where it was completely missing in the first, in the second, third, and even in the fourth, I just thought our pressure was just brilliant across the board.
Definitely ratcheted up, and that's what makes it so frustrating, because we gave up that start.
Yeah,
and then we managed. Well, so there's moments where you just think, oh, we'll never get back, and then there's moments where you think, hang on. I mean, there was so many moments in that third, definitely the last quarter, where they sort of got 3 to 4 goals in front. I think when Motlop kicked that goal, just a knife in the heart. When Goldstein got caught in the centre, tackled by De Koning, and just turnover, bang, goal. And it's just like, and you think it's all over, but then somehow the guys just willed a goal into it. There was one, I think, where Guelphy, a one-on-one against Wiedering, kind of on the wing, sort of forward line, manages to get that ball. I think it was a goal to Martin after that? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Then when Dersma marked in front of goal, got the bow and arrow out, you just thought, hang on, we were 12 points at that time, went back to 6 points. It was just hard work, as I said, all night, and it just hurt when those little errors that happened, because I thought that we could have pinched it.
Yeah, well, we could have. I mean, look, I'm glad you mentioned Dersma too, because, he dislocated his shoulder in that game.
Put it back himself.
Just popped it back in.
I've seen players pop a kneecap back.
Yeah.
A shoulder?
That was probably not his best game statistically for us, for Essendon. But I think it was his best game.
Yeah.
He was just gutsy and courageous.
I would agree.
And to be able to just pop a shoulder back in, let me tell you, that's not a pleasant thing.
He was applying a lot of pressure, smothers, just stuff that doesn't get the stats. But
has he always worn the headband?
No, that was the first time.
Is that
last
the thing?
night. I was intrigued by that as well.
Has he been hanging around with Geelong players?
Yes, enjoying.
Well, they'll be able to swap notes next week, of course.
Well, they will. Yeah. How tight do you wear yours?
Yeah. What do you
kind of leave sort of a bit of volume for the hair, or do you sort of go tight?
Do you use product, or does that kind of mess it all up?
Yeah. And how often do you wash? Okay. Yeah. So you had. Wright, I thought, did well. I mean, he took a couple of marks I'd never expected him to take. I mean, let's face it. He, with his extra responsibilities, as we talked about last week, he's been valuable. Right?
I think, Peter Wright in the last few weeks has... He's kind of changed, I think, the way people perceive him in the last few games. Maybe it's basically since Draper's gone, I guess. And... whereas Peter Wright, we kind of thought, we got him for cheap. He kicks a few goals. If it works, great. If it doesn't, no big loss. I think he's actually become an integral part of the team now. He's become a cult hero. I think Peter Wright... I think he's become a cult hero. He's doing stuff off the ball that I never expected that he would do. And, he's becoming a really valuable member of the side, not just for his goal kicking, but for what he's doing around the ground. And, his stepping up into the ruck has been really great for us since we lost those guys with injury. So, Peter Wright... And there's a couple I just also want to mention before we get to the two baddies. Because I think there was a lot of heroes out there for us. I mean, we didn't win the game, and we've got to not get comfortable with brave losses, let's be real. But we had a few heroes out there. I'd just like to also mention Zach Johnson and Angus Clark.
Yeah.
Now, there's two players I think they're going to play 200 games for us. Johnson looked fantastic off the halfback. Very composed. He had just under 20 possessions and going at around 80% disposal efficiency.
Yep.
And Angus Clark also just looks a footballer, doesn't he?
He does.
His body work and out marking and his contesting on the ball. He looks great.
At least he halves the contest.
And the young Day Wicks who came in, off the substitution bench, and the reason for that substitution I'm about to get to.
Yes.
I think he had about 6 possessions when he came on, and looks pretty composed as well. So they're going to have to be, because let's be honest, they're the future of this football club, and there's 2 players that are not the future of this football club.
Oh, easy.
Who I have been diligently defending for a couple of years now, and one of them most recently a few weeks ago, where I got roasted in the comments, and that's Archie Perkins and Ben Hobbs. I think we've seen enough, and it's very sad to have to say these guys are not going to make it at Essendon, and I do think that really they're on their last legs. The fact that Perkins was substituted out of that game, I don't know if he was injured. He might have been. Let's hope for his sake he was. But if Perkins, who's getting up to 85, 90 games now, was being dragged off at three-quarter time, it's not looking good, and he just was a non-contributor in that game. I think Hobbs, so I just quickly wrap. Perkins, I think it's an attitude issue. It's definitely not a skill issue. Hobbs, on the other hand, I think is a skill issue. I just don't think Hobbs has any sort of obvious weapon that he brings. If anything, he's an in and under kind of player that gets a handball out.
That's probably
the
weapon.
How often is he getting caught in play?
Look, first of all, I agree with Perkins. I agree. As sad as it is, I think that's the situation. Hobbs, I'm not as quick to sort of cast him aside, but he's had a couple of games where he just doesn't seem to have any time ever.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is. Certainly tough enough. I don't know. The intent seems to be there. He's not lair-rising like old Perkins, as my grade 5 teacher used to say.
Well, the trouble for Hobbsy is he's not fast, right? He's not tall. He's slow with the ball in hand. He can't kick very far. He can't mark overhead. What is he bringing to the table? Yeah. And already, when you look at guys like Zach Johnson, you're seeing a much better football after a couple of games.
Yeah.
Angus Clark, you're seeing a better football. You see the skills they possess.
Yeah.
And with time and experience and a few more pre-seasons under their belt, those guys are going to be really good footballers.
Yeah.
Ben Hobbs should be entering his prime now. Perkins should be entering his prime. At least with Perkins, we've seen a few really outstanding games. He's had a couple of Brownlow winning games, Brownlow points games, but he just goes missing, and he's too soft. He's not a tackler. There's just no room in the modern football for a guy standing around hoping someone's going to handball it to him.
Yeah.
You've got to go in and get your own football.
Yeah.
So I think there's some real worries, and I think the other player, of course, who, if he couldn't make it into that side last night, given the injuries and given the opportunities, is Elijah Sardis.
Yeah.
I don't know where Sardis is in his career, but everything I'm hearing is that he's just not defensively good. He doesn't have the endurance and the fitness. We know about his kicking problems, and that just doesn't seem to be getting any better. There's three players that I think at the end of this season we've seriously got to consider whether we look at offloading them. If we can get a handful of second, third, fourth round draft picks out of those three, I'd take it. I'd take it so that we can then use that as draft currency to get Adam Swade and Hussein Al-Achkar into the side without giving up our first and second round draft picks.
Yeah, Sartis, unfortunately, just not enough strings to the bow.
Yeah.
It would seem. That one's.
But the good news is there's some kids that are coming through that I think can readily fill their. And guys that we drafted with picks 50 and 70 and, as opposed to Hobbs and Sartis and Perkins, who are all first-round draft picks.
Yeah. But isn't that just
I know, yeah.
Isn't that the way it goes?
I'd still rather have the early draft.
I don't know why you're shocked.
Okay, so let me put it to you this way. If I've got a player I want to trade to you and I say, well, look, let me say I will take your player. You've got a star.
Right.
Let's say you're West Coast and you've got Harley Reid. And I say, okay, here's the deal. Knowing how you feel around draft picks, I'm going to give you picks 70 and 80 for Harley Reid. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, no, you can jam those up your ass.
Right, so there's the thing.
Right.
It's all about it's currency.
Okay, yes, all right.
It's all about currency.
So getting back then to the game, that last quarter, 4.5 minutes to go, and I think Dersma kicks that goal. I think we're now 6 points behind.
Yep.
Yes, we'd done a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting just to get back to that position. So it was amazing to be in that position. How did you think we went that last few minutes? Because it was just
not well.
Just frustrating, so frustrating.
Yeah. Look, the game was there to be won for sure. I think they got a couple of behinds. They could have kicked goals.
Yeah, they could.
To be fair,
they could. But they didn't.
They didn't. Their inaccuracy hurt them.
Missed as well. Yeah.
But they were handy points, as they say.
Yeah.
There were a couple of moments in those last few minutes where I think just our inexperience and lack of composure really unfortunately came to the fore.
Yeah.
One of them, amazingly though, this was probably not through lack of experience, was about 3 minutes ago, Sam Durham dropped a mark that he would take 99 times out of 100.
Oh, that one hurt.
That was an opportunity to play on, run straight into the 50 and bang it through from 45 out.
Yeah.
He dropped the mark. And then there was, I think it was Angus Clark, I might be wrong, that kicked the ball from out of the centre square into the forward line.
Yeah.
Really could have the forward line was pretty open. He could have picked a player out. He kind of went a bit of a dump kick forward. It wobbled all over the place and was rebounded out. So there were a couple of moments at the end there where...
McGrath.
Yeah. Oh, look, McGrath, that was his brain fade in the end of the third quarter when we were running the clock down. And, clearly that was the intent. 30 seconds to go.
Was that in the third quarter?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it was, last 30 seconds of that quarter and he went... He went to play on and thought that's the appropriate time to do the dash down the middle and the kamikaze handball, which got turned over. And fortunately, it only ended in a point scored. But had Carlton scored a goal off that mistake, I mean, that would have just been absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
But for a vice captain to do that when clearly the instruction is hold the ball, find a teammate, don't do anything stupid with 30 seconds to go on the clock. That is just a total lack of leadership from Andrew McGrath, and someone needs to tell him that. I just did.
You did. Okay, so, incredibly eloquently. So it was a game that we could have won. We certainly, Carlton were firm favourites and only became firmer heading into the game. But still, it's just hard when you give up 38-point lead in that first quarter, and it's just a hard slog because just how hard it is to just claw your way back into the game.
So can I ask you a question? Who is closer to a premiership? The team that won last night or the team that lost?
Yeah, good question. I'd like to think we are, but I don't know if that's my heart saying that. Yes, we decimated. You look at all the outs.
Right.
My God, it's a big list. Whereas Carlton, not as many. So you would think we are, but I'm always wary that that's my heart talking.
I don't think it's your heart. I think it's absolutely common sense. We are much closer to winning a premiership than Carlton. Look, there's a couple of moments last night. Two moments. Tom de Koning's tackle on Goldstein. In that, was it the last quarter? Where he face planted?
Definitely the last quarter.
Okay, now, had that been Sam Draper playing, I don't think that would have happened. And then there was Jack Silvani took a couple of saving marks throughout the game. We didn't have a tall defender out there. I mean, Laverde did very well, let me say. But had he had Reid or Ridley or Mackay out there, so just those two players, that type of player missing from our team probably cost us the game. I think we're way, way in front of Carlton in terms of our depth and our youth. They've got a better top five. If you look at their best five players, other than I would think maybe Zach and maybe Martin would get into their top five, top six.
Yeah.
But I mean, on paper at least, Cripps, dual Brownlow medalist, Chera, Walsh, Wiedering, de Koning. Their top five players are very good.
Yeah. Well, Walsh had been quiet, but of course we played him into form.
Yeah,
he had a ripper night.
Yeah, so I think Carlton have got some serious worries, and I don't think there was no question that the mood coming out of the MCG was pretty buoyant amongst the Essendon supporters and not so much amongst the Carlton supporters. I think they know that if they don't make an impression on the finals this year, that side is only getting older and there's not a lot of youth coming through. So,
well, I think their administrators, was it Brian Cook or whatever, at the start of the year said they were aiming for a top four finish. So
they're not going to make finals at this rate. They seriously are in trouble. They're not a good team.
I can feel your heart breaking.
Oh.
Smashing into pieces.
So we've got a big one coming up.
Well, we've got the Geelong game. It's a twilight game on Saturday. It's with Durham now out. Let's face it, he'll be out.
Probably.
I don't see Redmond coming back in. That calf will turn into 8 weeks.
That's probably yeah. I noticed the Essendon injury list was published. I don't think there's a player back this century, actually, by the look of it.
Yeah, so it's a concern. Geelong, obviously our bogey team. I mean, we've got a few, but they're there. Then we've got to go over to Fremantle to play them. Then we go into a bye. Carlton was the game that we thought if we were going to win any over these 4 weeks, that was our shot. And it proved to be. There was a chance last night, a very decent chance. Where we go from here?
I don't think we're in any. There should be no worries or concerns amongst Essendon supporters. We're not going to make the finals, right? I mean, and we don't want to. Why would we want to scrape into the 8 only to be smashed and kicked out first week?
Just for those memes to go on a bit.
Right, but here's the thing. If any of the sort of budding young superstars in the competition are thinking about jumping ship from their current team, I reckon they're looking at Essendon going, that's a side I reckon is going places, and I'd be pretty happy to be a part of that project.
I don't think they're quite thinking that. I like the way you're selling it. You're selling it very well.
They're thinking that.
Have you thought about selling solar power?
They're definitely not thinking, gee whiz, I'd like to get a crack at being a Carlton player for the next 10 years. There's no question that we're showing enough to be excited without blowing our chances of a high draft pick. So I know you're not a fan of the draft, but if we can go into the draft at the end of this season showing real promise, a lot of exciting young talent in that list, and still have 2 top 5, top 6 draft picks, fantastic. That would be an incredibly good outcome for us. And if we were in the market for a Raul or a Zach... Did Zach Butters sign on yet? I don't know if he has.
I think he's a chance.
Or even, the opportunity of getting Harley Reid. We're showing enough to excite those guys. And they're watching Essendon and they're seeing the development, they're seeing the progress. Okay, we're not winning, we're probably not going to make the finals, but there's enough to get excited about. But I'm telling you, Geelong next week, I think the dam might burst. Yeah. I really do. I think, the 2 weeks of fantastic effort to fight back into games against Carlton and Brisbane might kind of come home to roost against the Cats.
If they pile on 6-7 goals in the first quarter, there'll be no coming back from that. They're too professional a unit to allow that to happen.
Yeah,
it'll just,
that's right.
The dam will burst, as you say. That is the right analogy. But let's hope not. We're always hopeful.
Yeah.
But that one, that could be a bridge too far.
Could be. Jeremy Cameron would be licking his lips at the moment. Let's see.
Getting very excited.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we need to cover on this one, or have we analysed it enough?
I think we've over-analysed it,
right?
And I don't think anyone's the wiser, frankly speaking.
Okay. But no, they normally aren't. But you're just going to hope that Melbourne drop the game today and go go a little bit closer to the abyss.
Well, of course.
Just keeping your eye on that first round draft.
Absolutely, and let's pray that Collingwood absolutely smash them, and we can.
I don't.
No, you don't. Why would you? Anyway, because you're keen on getting the number 35 draft pick.
No.
Right. Exactly.
Getting up.
I got you with that analogy about, hey, I'll trade you pick 80 for Harley Reid.
I know you like to think you can.
I did. I think we can go to the vote on that one.
Yes, all right. Okay. All right. Please, as always, comment. Let us know. Are we happy with the Brave victory? I don't think so. Not so much this week. All right. Comment below. Thanks again, as always, for watching. We're done.
See you soon.
Bye for now.
Bye.